SGT Discovery Kids, and welcome back to GNN, where every week we keep you informed on what God is teaching us in His Word. I'm Miss Jessica.
And I'm Mr. Hattie. We've been studying the family of Jacob, and today we're going to focus on one of the sons of Jacob. God would use this son to save his family from peril and bring them to safety. This son's name was Joseph.
Joseph was the son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. As Joseph grew up, his father favored him as well. This made his other brothers jealous and caused friction within the family. To make matters even more difficult for his jealous brothers, Joseph was a special kid. God spoke in dreams to Joseph as a young boy, even before he could understand what was happening.
One day, Jacob, now called Israel, asked Joseph to go find his brothers who were out caring for their flocks of sheep. While Joseph was on his way to his brothers, they saw him coming and made a plan to harm him. Joseph's oldest brother, Reuben, told them not to harm him and only put him in a pit so that he can come back and get him later. But while Reuben was away, Joseph's other brothers were so jealous that they sold him as a slave to traders on their way to Egypt.
Can you imagine how sad Joseph must have been to be betrayed by his family? He could have become angry and bitter. He could have made the choice to rebel against God. But instead, Joseph stayed committed to God and honored him in all that he did.
Joseph was sold as a slave to the captain of Pharaoh's guard, Potiphar. He was first treated as the rest of the slaves, but when Potiphar saw how skilled and hardworking he was, he placed Joseph over the rest of the servants and put him in charge of his whole household. Joseph served Potiphar well, but Potiphar's wife tried to get Joseph to dishonor God. Joseph would never let himself disobey God, so Potiphar's wife had him sent to prison.
Egyptian prisons were not happy places. Joseph lived in a miserable cell with criminals. He could have chosen to give up and despair, but Joseph did all he was asked to do, and the prison guard realized that Joseph was special. He liked Joseph so much that he put him in charge of the other prisoners and trusted Joseph to do all that he was asked to do. While in prison, God continued to teach Joseph how to interpret the dreams God was giving him and those around him. One night, two of Pharaoh's servants, who were fellow prisoners with Joseph, had dreams that troubled them. Joseph asked them what their dreams were and was able to interpret exactly what they meant. One of the servants, Pharaoh's cupbearer, was released from prison and placed back in the service of Pharaoh.
2 years later, Pharaoh himself, the king of Egypt, had a dream that troubled him. He saw 7 healthy cows being consumed by 7 unhealthy cows, and he saw 7 healthy wheat being consumed by 7 unhealthy wheat. When he woke up, he looked for an interpretation and could find none. It was then that Pharaoh's cupbearer remembered Joseph and how he interpreted dreams in prison. He told this to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had Joseph taken out of prison. Joseph was brought to Pharaoh and told Pharaoh that it was not him who interpreted dreams, but it was God. He also told Pharaoh what God had warned him about. He said that the next 7 years would be bountiful and that Egypt would have more than they needed, but that those years would be followed by 7 years of famine and want.
Joseph told Pharaoh that they should take the surplus from each year and put it aside so that they would be able to survive the years of famine. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph that he placed him in charge of the whole kingdom. The only person greater than Joseph was Pharaoh himself. God showed Joseph that because of Joseph's obedience and God's faithfulness, he was able to bring Joseph from prisoner to power in one day.
Joseph did exactly what he said he would do and stored up extra food for each year. 7 years later, the famine came precisely when God said it would come. All the people around Egypt were starving and suffering and came to Egypt for food. Joseph's brothers also came to Egypt for food, and boy, were they surprised to see Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. At first, they were frightened because they thought Joseph would harm them. But Joseph forgave his brothers and told them to bring the family to Egypt so that they also would be saved.
Joseph stayed true to God and obeyed him in the most difficult circumstances. God was faithful to Joseph and showed him that he would never leave his side. Because of God's faithfulness, the family of Jacob was saved and began to live in Egypt. Joseph is a lesson to us all that even in the toughest time, God is still working and preparing a way. We're going to learn more about this now in the verse of the week with Mr. Hattie.
Thanks, Miss Jessica. This week's verse is found in Genesis chapter 45, verse 5. Joseph is speaking to his brothers, and he says, "And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." Joseph was able to forgive his brothers and see beyond what they had done to him. He was able to see God's hand upon his whole life in good times and the bad. Joseph knew that God was always faithful and chose to remain faithful and obedient in return. Take some time this week to ask God to give you peace in difficult times and show you where He's working in your life. Well, that's all for the verse of the week, and now on to our Animal of the Week segment with Miss Jessica.
Thanks, Mr. Hattie. This week's animal is found all over the world and has a very important job of pollinating plants. They are quite the buzz. Do you know what it is? If you said the honeybee, then you're correct. Honeybees are native to Europe and Africa. They move from plant to plant and pick up pollen to bring back to their hive to make honey. As the bee goes from plant to plant, some of the pollen gets passed around and helps the plants to multiply. Honeybees communicate with one another by dancing in order to show the other bees where the good pollen is. Male bees are called drones, and female bees are called worker bees. They all work together to take care of the queen bee so that she can lay her eggs and grow the colony. Honeybees are pretty amazing creatures, and we all love to eat the honey they make. But they don't make the honey for us. They make it for themselves to get through the winter. Just like Joseph, they know that they need to save more than they need while they can so that they have enough during hard times. God used Joseph to save the family of Abraham, but while he was saving Joseph's family, he saved all of Egypt and the people around them as well. God is awesome, and his plans are higher than ours. Take time to be like Joseph and ask God to give you the patience and peace to see what he is doing and plan ahead to bless your family and others. That's all for the Animal of the Week, and now back to our newsroom.
Well, that wraps up things for us here on the Gospel News Network. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. God bless you, and remember, be blessed.
And be a blessing.